Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the continuation of our tutorial on web design. So previously we have covered most of the topics under HTML, including tags, tags, attributes, elements, and we discussed many other tags like the table tags, the list tag, images, forms, and many others, the header tags, so and then some special tags for styling like bold, underline, italics, and all others. So if you have not seen it, you can go to our tutorial. You'll be able to see all the courses we have already covered, the topics we have already covered on web design under HTML. So you get yourself acquainted to them before you can proceed to whatever next lesson we will be doing. So for today we'll be looking at CSS. So what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So Cascading Style Sheet is just the language of the web that enables styling of the website itself. So as you can see, we were able to design our HTML. We were able, like I explained in one of the videos we have done previously, the HTML is just like a skeleton of a website, while CSS is like the flesh that is added to the skeleton to make it look beautiful. Just as humans are, if you don't add flesh to humans, we will look very ugly, right? So the work of CSS is to add beautification to the skeletal system of the website, which is the HTML. So now there are two ways you can add CSS to your web page. We have actually three ways. We have actually talked about one before, using internal styling, which using inline styling, which is directly added to the tag as an attribute. So let's get started with anytime you want to add, I will create a new file and call it css_practice.html. So I'll generate the basic syntax of HTML. I'll call it CSS practice. Alright, so now if I open the h1 tag, for example, to style my code inline, I'll have to add the style attribute and put the attribute name, attribute, property, and value. For example, if I want this color to be red, I'll just supply red to it directly like this. So that is how the internal style worked, and we have done it severally. I'll just type welcome to our CSS tutorial. So I'll save this and okay, so I'll render it on the browser. Just a moment. Okay, as you can see, I actually open it on the browser, and you can see welcome to our tutorial there, right? So okay, sorry. So as you can see, welcome to our tutorial on CSS. Welcome to our CSS tutorial rather. So now internally I styled it I've styled it. That is why you are now able to see the color red attached to it. If I want it bigger, I can just use something like font size and use, let's say, 100 pixel, for example. And then if I refresh the page, you can see how big it is on this screen, right? So that is exactly how that works. That is how exactly that one works. So, but there are limitations to how you can style your website using the inline CSS. One of the limitations is that let's assume you want to do a lot here, right? You have to keep on writing the codes. You have to keep on. You have to write. You have to write as many codes in inline to be able to output whatever styling you desire your website to be. So that now brings us to internal style, internal CSS. So now to write your internal CSS, we will leave all these out and come inside this place and then open a tag, the style tag, and this is where we will write our syntax for the cascading style sheet, which is CSS for short. So now how do we write it? So we have set of rules that you have to write to affect your website in general. So I'll start explaining them one by one. First of all, you have to define selectors. Excuse me, I got interrupted. You have to define selectors. What are selectors? Selectors are just names you give to variables of CSS, instructing them exactly what they will need to do. We have three types of selectors. We have the class selector. A class selector is written starting with the dot sign. So you put dot and then you write your selector. A selector can have any name, right? So now if it is a style selector, you use a class selector, you use dot to identify the name. So I'm just going to use this so that you understand that it can be any name. Then you define the same thing we did here by doing color red. Then another, I can define font size 100 pixel. So now how do we call this? I will explain it to you. You come here to directly to the tag you want to actually style. So you now call, since this is this type of selector we use here is a class selector, you have to come to class, put equal sign, then you call the name of the class. In our case, the class is Moses, right? So when you call it Moses, it will automatically go to CSS to this style, the style tag, iterate through the whole code you are written here, find Moses, and append all the values, or use all the values that you have declared, the properties and values you have declared here to style your work here. So if I come back to the browser and refresh, you can see I'll not refresh, so I'll refresh. It will still remain the same. The reason why it remains the same is because it is the same property we declared here. If I comment this out, so to write a comment in CSS, I will explain what a comment is. A comment is just like a part of the code that should not be executed by the browser. So to write comment, you put /* asterisk, you write all the things you want to comment, you close it with asterisk and forward slash. So if I refresh, so this is what I just talked about. So if I this is the comment I just did, forward slash asterisk, then asterisk forward slash, to comment out this code. So if I go back and refresh the browser, now all the styling we have added to this text have disappeared. That is because we added it before inline, we moved it here, it remained the same. So I'm going to uncomment it now, so that it will go back to how we want it to be. And now refresh it. You can see it came back because the attributes and values have now been supplied directly to the h1 tag. So now when you are declaring a selector, there are special things I want you to look at. So you see, when you create a selector name, now let's use a selector that is a name that looks like what we want to do. So now the name has changed to title, no longer Moses, so that it reflects exactly what it is helping us to do here, because this is like the title of a text or a heading in our website. So now I called it title here. Then the next thing that follow is the curly braces. I open the curly braces, then I wrote the property, and then the value. I ended it with semicolon. I wrote another property, I wrote another value. If I want another property like padding, I can just do 10 pixels. I can do, that's too much. Let's do like 20 pixels. Let's change the color to be white. Oh, so if I refresh the browser, this will not reflect because the color of the website is already white, so it is covering it. But if I add another property called background color and I change it to something like gold, you will watch. Okay, I didn't go back to my code editor, but look at what I did. I just added a new property. I added color white. FFF stands for white. Don't worry, you don't have to cram the color codes. As you are using it, I will explain different types of color for you. Then we added a background called gold here. Then if we go back to our browser and refresh, you will see that we have a background gold, and then there is a space between the background and the text itself with a white color in it. So it now gives us this welcome to our CSS tutorial. So I believe you already understand the concept of selector. So a selector is just like a name, that is a variable that is given to our CSS group of codes that can help us to style an element in our website. So you can have as many selectors as you want. So I can have another one now, but let me explain. After I've explained that selectors are defined by properties values. You can even 1000 CSS lines of code here, you can have it with the property value like that. As far as there is no mistake, when you refresh the browser and you add it to your tag, it will execute well and render as you want it to be, right? Very good. So now this is the class selector. Now we have another kind of selector called the ID selector, and the ID selector is written as hash. You put hash, you put the name of the selector you want. I'm using selector 2 here. I'm assuming that title is selector 1, so it must not be selector 2. You can write any name you want. You can even use Moses like I did before. So if you come here, I can replicate all these codes I have done here in the selector 2. So but this type of selector is an ID selector since it was written with asterisk. So to actually add it to your HTML tag, your HTML element, you need to come here, and instead of using the class, remember the dot title represent the class because it started with title. That was why we use class here. But now this Moses started with the hash symbol or the hash sign, so we will not call it the class, we will not access it as class. It is the ID selector. So we'll come here and use ID, and then we put the value of the name of the selector, which is Moses. So that means this selector is ID selector, this selector is the class selector. So if we refresh this page, it will give us the same thing. So I'll go back to the browser. You can see welcome to our CSS tutorial, then welcome to our CSS tutorial 2. So we basically copied the same values and properties for this selector, brought it here, and it is giving us the exact value that we want, right? So I'm establishing this video is an introductory class to CSS, right? So you might find it a bit challenging at first, but as you begin to use it, it will be like it will be very simple for you. So just take your time, study, ask questions on the comment section, either on our Telegram group or on our WhatsApp group. Will always be available to respond to you, to answer your question. So now the next type of selector we want to talk about is the element selector. So the element selector, we have or the tag selector, we have HTML tag here. So if I said I want to affect all the H1 tags, I want all the sizes of H1 tags on our website to be 200, all I just need to do is to come and write H1. So I'll now say font size 120 pixel, font size, not font, like this, 120 pixel. What this means is that it will look within our HTML code, find every tag that is H1 and effect it with font size 120 pixel, even though we already define the selector for the ID selector for Moses to have font size 100 and class selector title to have font size 100, but it will override the font size of 100 by 120 because it will look for the ID selector, for the tag selector or attribute selector or element selector here, and effect all H1 within our code to have the font size of 120 pixel. So if we go back to our browser and refresh this, okay, let's comment this out and see. Okay, you see the font size changed, the font changed. So okay, so let me show you something. In our code, I commented out the font size for the ID selector and font selector, yeah, because they were rather overriding the element selector that we have written here. So that was why I commented it out. And if you go back to the browser, you see that the size has changed from 100 to this from 120 that we have changed it to. So that is how it works. So in a situation where you want to effect all elements in the web page that have the same tags, right, you can just write it like this without the dot, or the without the dot, which represent the class selector, and the hash which represents the class selector, and it will affect all the tags that have this element selector within it, in the HTML part of your code. Yeah, so that is how the three types of selector in CSS works. So if you already understand it, we'll be moving. Let me show you something. I told you that we have the element selector here, right? So this body too is an element selector. If I want to change the entire background color of this website to, let's say, blue, what will I do? Doesn't matter where I write it, but since it is body is the first tag in our HTML, I'll write it as the first thing here. If I come here and write body, and I say background color, let's say blue, for example, these colors are obvious, that is why we are using them. When we begin working with real life designs, we might not be looking at these types of colors. We'll be using color pools instead. So now we have the body to be blue, so it will come and locate the body. Whatever text you write between here and here will all have a background of blue. So now, oh my god, sorry, I was not on my code editor. I was explaining that the body tag, right, the body tag can be written with the attribute selector to change the entire background, and this is the code I have written while you were not looking at my code editor, so my apologies. So if I come back to the browser and refresh it, watch, I'm going to refresh it now. You see that it changed the background color. Now there is an element on top of it that have a background, that is why it is appearing on top of it. If not, the text and whatever you write on this website will be sitting on a blue background, because we have altered the entire background to blue. So that is what that does. That is what it does. That is the effect this will do for you. So if I delete all these selectors we have written, the colors you will be seeing now will no longer be this good on it. You can see we have a background color and then all this text on it, right? So now there are other special things you can do on this body. You can define the font family that it will be using throughout your website. You can also, normally when you are building a website, there is not supposed to be any space between this left and the content here, and also on the right hand side, because if I increase are we there? Yeah, so if I increase this text, you will discover that, okay, if I come back to my code editor here, and let's say I've written a paragraph, you will see I'll just let me check if I have lorem installed. Okay, I have lorem. So if I refresh, if I come back to the browser and refresh, you can see that there is a space between the starting of lorem of my text, by paragraph text here, and also the end. So we can come to this body part here and then tell it that, oh, we don't want any padding. So if we put zero padding now, okay, sorry, I was not on the editor. So if we come to the body part and add padding 0 and then return back to our browser and refresh it. Oh, did I save it? So we can have padding and then margin to be 0. So now you can see that the space between the content and the body itself are touching each other. You are the one that will be controlling how the text and the contents of your website are arranged. So now that we have established the introductory parts to CSS, we will, in our next lesson, we will look at how we can start styling properly, looking at each properties in CSS and how to use them efficiently. Thank you. So like I was saying, that we have three types of CSS, which I mentioned to be the inline CSS, which I described to be written inside the tag directly as style. Then you put equal sign and then quotation marks, just as we have, just like this. So we also have the internal, which are written here. Internal means it is written within the HTML file itself. And then the third type of CSS we have is the external. The external CSS is written outside, the codes are written outside of the HTML, inside a separate file, and then the file is called inside the HTML itself. So I'll demonstrate that to you so that you will see how it works. So I will go ahead and create a new file. I'll call it styles.css. So the name must not be style.css. So I'll go ahead and write my body background ash. Is there color ash? Let's use maroon. I'll do padding 0. Then I'll do margin 0, right? Then I will go ahead and write a title attribute, a title selector. Then I will say font size 20 pixel. Then we have a font family Time New Romance, like this. So I've written the style. I'll go back to my practice. I'll delete what we already have here. So the internal CSS, I'll go in the CSS file should be called within the head. Remember I told you that the head section of the HTML is where information about the website is written. So if you want to, just as we have the title here, if you want to add beautification to the website, you call the external CSS inside the head part of the HTML. So like this, I'll now say link href. What's the name of our file? I spelled the styles wrongly, so I'm going to go ahead and rename it styles, like this. So I'll just say styles.css rel style sheet, right? So, and this is just it. You go ahead, close your link tag. Now I think I was explaining to you that when there are two ways of closing HTML tags. There are some tags that you, as I have opened the link tag like this, for me to close it I would have to come and type /link, right? But you see that HTML did not suggest for me that there is a closing link tag. So to close such tags, you just space your greater than sign, put /, and now you have closed it. There are many types of of tags that we have closed like this. I've even explained it in my previous videos. For example, the input tag, if I'm to write input, is like this. So there is no closing input tag directly, you have to close it within itself. So we can call such tags self-enclosed tags. So if I'm creating an input, it should just be input then forward slash. After I've written the attributes for the inputs like the name, and then what have you, all other properties or attributes of the inputs that I want to actually write. So that is how that works. So for the link, link tag, which is used for importing our CSS file from external CSS, we just use the href. This rel is to define the type of document that you are importing. So in our case is style sheet. Remember I told you the CSS stands for cascading style sheet, so that is where this style sheet comes from. So we are telling it that okay, we are importing a cascading style sheet. So, and also remember that the extension must be saved as CSS, which stands for cascading style sheet, right? So now I will go back and refresh the web page. I'll refresh the web page after saving. So we have it here. Can you see that? So I changed the body to, I changed the body actually to the background color of the body to maroon, right? So and the only style I added was this title tag, which is actually, we only added font size and font family to it. So if I added color like white to it and come back, if I've added white color like this, I just added a new property called color. If I come back to my browser and refresh, you will see that welcome to our CSS tutorial changed automatically to white color. And the reason why this h1 is smaller than this one is because we reduce the default size of h1 to have font size 20 pixels as written on inside our style.css here. You can see it on this line, on line 8 here. So now this is how to call our external CSS. Remember, I didn't do anything here. I didn't write the CSS manually here. I wrote all of it inside our style.css. So and then I called it here, and then I'm using the selectors I created inside my style sheet there. So I believe this is clear. The advantage of using external style sheet to internal or inline is that it gives you a cleaner representations of your code. You see, I have a separate file for writing this. I don't need to start, when my project grows larger, there is no need for me to start looking for where I declare this selector within this HTML file. Of course, when this text when the codes in our HTML file becomes too large, it will be kind of confusing to be scrolling to check for properties and selectors to see how we can modify it and all of that. But if you write it in a separate file as I've done like this, you just have to come to the file, adjust it, come back to your HTML this thing. If you have correctly written what you want to do here, call the class or the ID you have created, and then you come back to your browser. You come back to your browser and so I was explaining this thing without rendering this to view. So I guess you understand the advantages I just mentioned. It gives you a cleaner code, like able to arrange your code, understanding that CSS is written in a separate file and the HTML is also written in a separate file. All you just need to do is to call or connect the CSS by using the link tag, then specifying the href attribute to know what file you are referencing to this HTML page as your style sheet. So that this is how it works. So once you save your changes in style.css, you come back to your practice page, call your class, go back to the browser and refresh, and you'll be good. So these are the three types of CSS. For the purpose of this tutorial, we will be sticking strictly for now with external CSS, so that our code will be maintained. Anytime you want to look at your style, you go to your style file and adjust. You come back to this place. So for each of these tags that we discussed about, including the list, the form, and all of that, what we'll be doing is that we'll be styling all of them one by one. You see how it works, and then you'll be using it to build real life projects from there on. So now let me explain something. Take for instance, you have a folder called CSS folder, right? I just created a folder here already, and then I move my style.css inside here. So now the file is now inside there. If I assuming I want to call it, let's go back and refresh the browser to see whether it will display. So I'll go back to the browser now. You can see that the CSS file no longer take effect. Why? Because we have changed the directory to which the style is placed. It is no longer the style.css file here is no longer in the same folder with CSS practice, which is our HTML file that we are using currently. So if I okay, so now on this browser, let me show you something. If I inspect this page, you will see if I go to console, it will tell me that failed to load resources, file error, style.css. That means it's telling me that my HTML file is not able to find style.css because they are no longer in the same folder. So how do I solve this? To solve this problem, all you just need to do is to go back to your code editor, then look for where you call the style.css. Then since we have placed it inside the CSS folder, the CSS folder is directly in the same root directory with CSS practice.html file. All I just need to do is to come here, write css slash style.css. You see, it suggested it for me. So you see, once I save, then I return back to this place. I return back to my browser and refresh, it will automatically appear. So it is actually important to understand how file are structured in HTML so that you can be able to work with it directly. So in our next class, I'm going to remove all these files, bring CSS outside of the folder, put it in the same file that we'll be using, index.html, so that it doesn't confuse many people who are just doing this for the first time. Then we'll begin to style our website. Individual tags that we'll be working with, we'll continue to style them and see how they work properly.